Did you ever pick up a sleeve pattern and think, wait, this is not anything like I imagined? Or attempted to draft a sleeve pattern and get stuck on that first curve? Sleeves can feel confusing, but they don't have to be. Today, I'm breaking down what I learned about drafting sleeve patterns that allowed me to move forward with confidence. And by the way, if you ever get lost figuring out what comes first, when to attach a sleeve, or how to keep your whole project organized, I've got a free order of construction guide you can download. It lays out all the steps for sewing any garment in a clear order. Super helpful when sleeves or anything else starts to feel chaotic. I'll drop in the link below. A sleeve may just seem like a tube for your arm, but it's much more than that. It's crafted at just the right angle to attach to the bodice. The curve fits the curve of your bodice, and it also allows enough ease so your arm can move freely without distorting the rest of your garment. The sleeve just doesn't hang there. It plays a vital part in how the garment fits, moves, and looks. If the area at the bicep is too tight, it restricts movement. If your sleeve cap is too short or too high, it can twist or turn or pull in that place. And even the angle that it's attached to the bodice can really affect the comfort of the garment. Some sleeves are big and puffy, and other sleeves are simple and minimalistic, but no matter what the design, your sleeves are vital for the structure of the garment. And that's why understanding how sleeves are shaped and how they fit to the garment is so important. So your garments not only look good, but are also fit really great. So let's talk about a few basic sleeve types. There's the set-in sleeve, the raglan sleeve, the kimono sleeve, and the drop shoulder sleeve. These are very common. You probably have some or all of them in your closet already. First up, the set-in sleeve. This is the most common sleeve type out there. It's sewn into a defined armhole, what we call an armscye. You've probably worn 100 of these without even realizing it. It can be slim and tailored or loose and gathered at the top for a puff sleeve. Set-in sleeves are super versatile, but they can also be tricky to sew because you're easing a rounded shape into a curve. Next is the raglan sleeve. This one extends from the neckline down to the armhole, kind of a diagonal line. You'll see this in a lot of sporty clothes and sweatshirts because it gives great mobility. It's a little easier to sew than a set-in sleeve, and it creates a softer shoulder line. So if you want something that's comfy and stylish, raglan is a great choice. Then there's the kimono sleeve. A kimono sleeve is actually part of the bodice. It's cut as one continuous piece, so there's no shoulder seam at all. That makes it easier to sew, especially for beginners, and it gives a really nice flowy shape. It's perfect for woven fabrics when you want a looser fit. And finally, the drop shoulder sleeve. With this one, the shoulder seam sits lower down on the arm, and the sleeve usually connects with a straight or slightly curved seam. It creates that slouchy, oversized look you see in relaxed fit tees and sweaters. It's also beginner friendly because there's less shaping involved. And let's be honest, it's forgiving if your fit isn't perfect. We like to learn about these different sleeve types, so when we're designing our garments, we can think carefully about which one we want. These different sleeve types determine how casual or formal a garment is, how comfortable or more rigid a garment would feel to wear, and also how easy it is to sew the different sleeve types. So when I begin to draft a pattern, I'm going to think about these few things. First, I think about what fabric I'm going to use for the garment I want to make. Is it really flowy fabric? Then the sleeve is going to be very flowy and move a lot. If it's a very stiff fabric, then I might want a big puff on the sleeve. So it would be very difficult to get a big puff with a very light and airy fabric. So these are things that have to go hand in hand, the design that you want to achieve with the fabric that you ultimately choose. And second, I think about the fit and function of the sleeve. Do I want a garment that I'm going to have a lot of mobility, whether, I'm working out in this garment or, doing housework, then I want something that I can move around a lot more, such as perhaps a raglan sleeve or a dolman sleeve. Do I want something very dramatic for a special event with a big puff or, big bell sleeve down here? That wouldn't be as practical, if I'm doing the dishes. So these are important considerations, when I'm in the design phase. And third is the design and style I want. You can create a very simple garment. I have some very simple dress designs, but then I add a very dramatic bell sleeve, or I have one that the ruffle goes around and it really becomes a statement unto itself. Or I might have another garment that has a nice flounce on it and I want the attention to be the flounce, then I really just use my basic sleeve pattern because I just sort of want that to fade away. And let's be real, sleeves can feel so frustrating when you're starting out, and there's a reason for that. Unlike straight seams, sleeves curve into the body and you're attaching a curved seam into another curved seam, and often you have that added ease to give this extra comfort for movement here at the sleeve cap. And if your ease in your sleeve is too much, you might start puckering and getting puffy here where you don't want it to be. If you have too little ease, it might make it very difficult to move around. And the tricky part is sleeves do not work in isolation. So the sleeve has to match the arm sky that you have in your bodice pattern. So if you make a change in your bodice pattern around the armhole, you also have to make the same change to your sleeve. So sleeves have to match that bodice. You cannot just take any sleeve and match it with any bodice. You need to make sure the two agree. So once you understand how shape, ease, and fit all work together, it becomes less mysterious, and then it starts to make sense. That's when I was able to look at a sleeve and understand exactly where the problem lies and be able to fix any problems I had. I mentioned a bit about ease in the sleeve, and it does confuse people sometimes why your sleeve pattern is going to be longer than the armscye measure on your bodice. And that's because you want anywhere between an inch to an inch and a half of extra measure on your sleeve when you have a woven fabric. So you can ease that, or just it's a very, very slight gathering. So it curves around, and you'll see when you do it, it'll sort of like stick out a little bit while you make these curves. That gives you that extra room to move your arm. If you have knit fabric, you don't need to ease in then. And thank goodness I work mostly with knits or even wovens that have a little stretch. So I don't tend to worry too much about this ease. But if you have a pure woven, you do need to make sure that your sleeve pattern has this extra ease in, and then slowly gather it in. But it does take some skill to get used to that, to make sure you're gathering it in nice and smoothly so you don't get puckers and puffs and things that are unseemly in the final garment. And this ease only works if the curves from your sleeve pattern and your bodice pattern are comparable. Particularly at the bottom of the sleeve, you really want that to mirror the bottom of the armscye pattern. They pretty much just are exact alignment there. And then you want your sleeve cap. Sometimes if it's too high, it'll make it difficult to get in, or if it's too flat, it'll make it more difficult to move around. So that also is having the curves match between the bodice and the sleeve pattern are very important. And here's a few tips to make it easier to attach your sleeves. It is very important to always notch your sleeve pattern as well as your bodice pattern in the same place so you can align those notches. You get 2 notches for the back part of the sleeve and 1 notch for the front, so you're not reversing those. That could be a very big problem. And then anything that is above the 2 notches, that space in between the 2 notches, that is the area that you would ease in. You don't ease in the part below the notches. That would just be straight because that's the part that's underneath your arm. So you don't want to add any added gathers there. And when you're dealing with ease, a really good way to help ease that in is you just do a little basting stitch, which is using your longest stitch on your sewing machine in between those notches. And then you could just pull that basting stitch just a little bit to get those gathers. And then that allows you to sew in a lot easier, as you're attaching your sleeve. And it's really important to make sure your sleeve is on the grain line, because if you do not have your sleeve on a grain line, it could really start twisting and turning when you're wearing it and be quite uncomfortable. And lastly, I would say, test it in a muslin. I'm really bad at this. I am too impatient to often create a muslin, but I often regret this. So if you can slow down, create a muslin with some leftover fabric and test it out, it's always a good idea, particularly if you have a really expensive, final fashion fabric that you're using. You definitely want to test it with a muslin. And once I understood about sleeve cap ease and how the curve is so important for my sleeve, it started making things so much easier, and I could then easily see if the sleeve was going to fit or not, and it made sewing so much more enjoyable. Some of the telltale signs that the sleeve just isn't working is if it feels too tight in the bodice, or perhaps it's twisting around while I'm wearing it, or I'm having difficulty lifting and lowering my arms, or it might be pulling across the chest or the back. And what I do when I have any of these problems, I'm going to make sure it's on the grain line for that twisting motion. If it's too tight in the bicep, I will add some width in the biceps area to give a little extra ease. If I'm having trouble lifting and lower my arms, I might want to add a little bit to the sleeve cap there, or add in some ease. If I'm getting puffiness here, then I might want to lower the sleeve cap. And if I'm getting pulling across here, that could be a variety of things, but you might want to give your room to the bicep as well. And you might want to check the type of fabric that you're using. Perhaps you need a lighter fabric. If it's very stiff fabric, it might make it hard to move with the sleeve type that you've chosen. And here's the things that I did to help me get more comfortable with sleeves. I did start with a fitted sleeve because I think that teaches you all the basics. It teaches you about sleeve cap ease. It teaches you about the sleeve cap height. It teaches you how to draft the sleeve and how to insert the sleeve in a typical garment. So that's the one I started with, and I got comfortable with all of these items to make sure that I was doing that all correctly. But to be honest, you might want to just start with something like a kimono sleeve that really has no seam here. It's all garment all in one. Super easy. You can get a real quick win of getting a garment. It has a sleeve, but you don't have to worry about all that complexity. So that's also a really great way to start, just to get a fun garment without having to worry about all those things. And take a look at your favorite garments in your closet. See how those sleeves are attached. Are they typically the set-in sleeve, or do you typically like a dolman sleeve? I know I do have a lot of dolman sleeves in my closet, and I really like those. They're sort of like a kimono sleeve. It makes it really quite easy to put together. Are you more of a raglan sleeve gal? So definitely take a look to see what you tend to lean towards, and then you can think to make sure that you learn to do that style. And you might just want to start with stretch fabrics. Typically for beginner sewists, they don't start with fabrics with stretch because they're slightly harder. But if you've already been sewing for a while, you might want to consider just using even a woven with a little stretch in it. If you have any stretch in the fabric, you don't have to worry about this ease, and it's a lot more forgiving. That's usually what I work with, and it does make it that I don't have to worry about the ease in my sleeve. So you might want to consider that. And if you want to learn how to get your hands in a sloper, check out this video here. And if you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe.